So,
Yep. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our annual Board of Education and State Delegation meeting. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. We have Senator Karen Lewis Young and a few other staff members who are joining us virtually, so thank you for joining us. We're going to start with just a quick round of introductions so we can know for the record who is here and who is in the room. So I'll hand it over to Delegate Pippi.
thank you. Delegate Pippi, representing District 4 and honored to serve as Delegation Chair.
William Fulton, State Senator, District 4.
My name is April Montgomery. I'm Chief of Staff for Delegate Celebrity of District 4.
Good afternoon, everyone. Eric Morris Phillips. I serve as the Associate Superintendent of Public Affairs for the school system.
Good afternoon, all. Stephen Blivis, Chief Legal Counsel for Frederick County Public Schools.
What's your name?
FCPS Chief Operating Officer.
Good afternoon, Cheryl Dyson, Superintendent.
Afternoon, Sarah Serga, Chief of Staff and Blueprint Coordinator for the system.
I'm Heather Clayball, the Associate Superintendent of Fiscal Services for FCPS.
Ken Kerr, Delegate representing District 3.
Paul Quarterman, Senator representing District 2, which is the eastern half of Washington County and the northern part of Frederick County.
Karen Yoho, Board Member.
Camila Reynolds Dominguez, Chief of Staff to Delegate Chris Fair.
Jeannie Ingles-Monier, Board Member.
Alex Thomas, Board Member.
April Miller, Delegate District 4.
Katie Brennan, FCPS Board Member.
Catherine Rich, Executive Assistant to the Board.
Paul Black, Board Member.
Dean Rose, Vice President of the Board.
And I guess I should have started. I'm Ray Gallagher. I'm the current of the board. There's somebody, yep, there we go. All right, so everybody has,
Senator Lewis Young, want to
yes,
say hello?
oh, Senator Lewis Young, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, Senator Karen Lewis Young, District 3.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Do your staff members want to introduce themselves who logged on? No? Okay. So everybody has in front of them and should have received via email and posted to our new system for sharing documents, our agenda, and we printed out several of the documents that were shared in advance of today's meeting. We'll start with our typical overview of our legislative principles. Karen Yoho is our legislative liaison and through the Maryland Association of Board of Education MABE, so she's going to provide some updates as well about the outlook for the upcoming legislative session from our perspective. We'll talk just a little bit about our links funding, and then we have Dr. Lugo and Dr. Sergo who will provide some school construction and blueprint updates. And then we'll talk about, from your all perspective, hopefully, some upcoming legislative priorities and from us as well. We did send some responses to the questions that you all sent in advance, but we'll have some opportunity to discuss those as well, and then we'll adjourn. Sounds good to everyone. All right, so we'll start with the legislative principles. Everybody has a printed copy of those. These should look familiar, I think, to most people sitting around the table because they're pretty consistent in terms of what we as a school system put out each year. We try to keep them broad so that we can align with more specific legislation that might come in throughout the course of the legislative session. So none of these legislative principles or priorities are really new. So we want to focus on equipping every student to be an empowered learner and an engaged citizen. As systems, we want to hire, support, and retain staff who champion excellence as a system. We want to pursue and utilize all of our resources as strategically and responsibly as possible, to nurture relationships with families and community, and then promote a culture of wellness and civility. So all of these are aligned with what we presented to you last year and probably the year before as well. I'm not going to read this to anybody because I know you all have seen this and can read, but happy to answer any specific questions or engage in dialogue about any of the legislative principles. But maybe I'll start by having Ms. Yoho share a little bit from the MABE perspective on the upcoming legislative session.
I would just say that the major change in this document, the legislative principles for us, is on page 6 state funding level of $642 million for school construction and renovation projects. We have upped that from previous years, and so just to draw your attention, you can green, you can wish, so, and on page 7 is that table is updated every year thanks to Dr. Lebo, and thank you to Ms. Clayball also for their input. So this document was, and I should step back. Let's say it all together. What is the main thing that school boards want? Local control. You all know that. And so you'll hear that and you'll hear that. And we try to, then shifting to May, try to remain kind of neutral and not politicize things so that all 24 school boards can get on board. And working to try to get all 24 school boards to have that input. We will have our first legislative meeting on the 15th. I was going to say next week, but it's not. It's the week after. There have been some changes in May. I know it is now public knowledge that Milt Nagel will be resigning to take a different position a little closer to home. And so I am the current treasurer. I was just elected treasurer. And so the officers will be busy hiring a new annual board of directors that Ms. Gallagher also serves on. Will be busy in the early part of the year going through the process of hiring a new executive director. And so also one of the other big changes to make is we are now our new strategic plan. So trying to figure out how that fits in, what are the measurements. We just had a retreat that we looked at to see how we know we're making the mark. Staff used to have a big sheet with checklists and all, and now it's going to be a different way of measuring success and progress on that. Along with Brian Dulé left, who was head of legislative. So Sam Mathias, who is really legal, has been doing a lot of 2 jobs, wearing 2 hats. So they are in the process of hiring a new lobbyist. We had been using consultants. That it will be phased out, and they're hiring also a paralegal and an intern. So more in-house legislative with May. I think those are the major changes. Again, we're all just looking to keep the foundation funding up. Everybody in May agrees with that. Some flexibility. I think once the waivers start coming through, because I don't see that they're not going to come through for a lot of places, but they'll be different. At our recent, annual conference, when somebody said something about pre-K and everybody's having trouble with pre-K, a couple of counties said, well, we're not. We're doing great. So it's different for each county, hence local control. What each one's going to have a hard time dealing with might vary. But again, we're all there together to say these basic things. It's for the children, we need foundation funding, and be interested to hear from you. I know one of your questions was the effects on the state of federal funding changes. So all that's to be seen and decided. I think that's about it.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments anyone on the table about the legislative priorities?
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Ms. Yoho. So question, do you have anything specifically as far as the blueprint with FCPS or Dr. Dyson, anything specifically that's impacting FCPS that needs to change in the blueprint? Because as we head into this next year, the blueprint fund will be completely drained. And so we are going to be using operating. And so we're not in a great fiscal position. So is there anything that you see that we need to change now so that we can kind of step back from that fiscal cliff?
So I think you'll hear a few of them coming up in the presentation a little bit later. And I know my PZAM group has some legislative priorities around that, recommendations.
You did a great job last year.
Thank you. So we didn't do 30 this year.
That was a lot, but I thought they were great.
That was a lot. So, but we are asking for a few things in terms of like tiering dual enrollment sort of the way, the model that pre-K uses, because it is bankrupting school systems. Although we know that it is a great program for our students, it's going to be difficult to sustain without funds. We went from paying $100,000 to $3 million. Right? So things like that, and looking at the minimum school funding in the aggregate. So those are just two big ones, but we'll talk a little bit more in depth about it when Ms. Claybaugh and Dr. Sergo present. So if you don't mind, we can come back to the question, but I think it'll be instructive to the conversation.
Perfect, thank you.
Question. Just on the Brunswick High School. So I know that in years past, I believe Senator Fulton and I came here and we wanted that to be the number one priority, our wish list, just given the age of the school and the challenges there. So we do appreciate that you've moved that up on the priority list. I noticed last year, or I should say earlier this year, there was a few $1 million for some initial design planning in the state budget, which is great. Moving that ball forward. And so this year, this is $4,327,000, and that, what, does that complete your local planning and design funding, or is that?
That's the completion of the design funding, the state portion. So we'll have an equal request on the county portion for this year. And local planning is just a separate requirement that the ISC has to attribute to the project. We have not received that, even though we've received a small portion in the state budget. The ISC has not granted us local planning approval. So it ultimately will not be eligible for construction funding in future years without that local planning. It's a procedural item we asked for last year and didn't get approved for it either, but we fully anticipate, based on the 75% recommendation for FY27, that we will receive local planning for that project.
So did the county match the $2 million that the state provided earlier this year for the initial design funding? And forgive me if I'm using the wrong acronyms or names. I think it was about $2 million in the state funding for the school initial planning. I didn't know. And I'm assuming you just said the county's you're gonna ask them to match the 4.3 million upcoming fiscal year.
Correct. And they provided funding to support the early design and site exploration, because as I know both of you are well aware, that it's going to be a very challenging site to construct, and our focus is making sure we have an end product that's going to last for the next 60+ years. We don't want to make a short-sighted decision about where the next building is located, because we really want it to be good for the students and residents of Brunswick long term. So the site evaluation process is taking a little longer than we would take on a typical project, but I would argue that it was no different than what we did at Frederick High for the exact same reasons. A very unique site, and so we needed to spend some time making sure that we're doing it correctly, and will also save us some money in the long run. Overall project costs.
My last quick point is just my personal request is we keep moving the ball forward with it. We understand there's funding challenges and site planning challenges, but it's good that we're seeing things moving. We want to keep them moving.
I think it's important to highlight, though, sir, is the county is committed to forward funding that project, and so it is definitely moving forward. It's just a question of the timing of state reimbursement.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify one thing. Didn't the initial $2 million plus come from the county? Didn't Executive Fitzwater include that in?
She did, and I'm pulling up the numbers so that I don't misspeak. I hate to misspeak on numbers.
That originally came. That's right. That came from the county. The original she got the ball rolling with that initial commitment of that 2 point.
What I was referring to was what was in the state budget.
State match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, it might have been a match, but
So it was a state match.
Yeah, and
I just want to clarify that.
I think he's trying to find it.
I am. I don't like to misspeak on numbers.
It's 2.7.
Senator Lewis Young has her hand up. I didn't see that.
Thank you. I had a meeting with Budget Secretary Jake Wiseman yesterday, and he told me he was fairly confident that in the governor's budget, there would be some incremental funding for school construction in Frederick County. Now, I don't know specifically what projects, but he did state it was incremental funding.
Thank you.
Yeah, so to confirm, it's 2.7 both counties. Thank you.
Senator Bolden.
I just have a quick follow-up question, including at the same time. So when I was out there a couple months ago, we were looking at things again, and there's a 40-acre parcel on the corner, just not catty corner, just literally across Route 17, it's farm, that I believe the developer has, like, they're building some more homes, but this 40-acre parcel is not a part of that. My question is, has the school board, I understand there would be potential challenges with going across 464 there, if they would have to build an elevated walkway or something, but has there ever been a consideration of leaving the sports facility because it's been recently renovated, like obviously where it's at, that would be large enough for the footprint of the school and some parking, but then that would leave the current footprint that's there, which is limited, to then be used for expanded parking for, you know, other events and their sports fields and things of that nature. So I'm just asking, I don't expect an answer that you've already looked into it. I just became aware of it not long ago. Actually, it was over Veterans Day weekend, so it wasn't even a couple months ago, it was last month.
So the quick answer was not aware. However, I did just meet with the mayor and his staff, trying to keep him and his team in the loop and abreast of where we are in terms of all of our process for project there. That did not come up, but I will follow up just to see.
The reason it didn't come up is they were talking about they never wanted to bring it up because there would be the fields and some would be opposite across 464. And I was like, well, if there's an opportunity to build something on an open site that we don't have to destroy what's there now, and even if it would involve building a skywalk across there for the, you know, for kids to cross safely, I would think that would be something to at least entertain.
State paying for the crosswalk.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get the state paid for crosswalk, the state route. Good point.
I will follow up. You like Mount St. Mary's and do a tunnel.
Tunnel, yeah, let's do that. Nothing bad will happen in a tunnel.
Okay.
You're gonna dig it.
Yeah. Tobacco.
Sounds like that's what I heard.
Thank you for that. It's something
That's what
could be, you know, if we want to have that discussion further, if it comes to the builder or whatnot, happy to be a part of that.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about the legislative priorities, principles? We'll have some more time to talk about school construction in a few minutes as well. So and it's not our last time talking about school construction or Brunswick, I'm sure. So next on our agenda is just our LINKS funding. So this is an annual request that we as a school system make to the state here to support our LINKS program at Frederick High School. So this will be our 10th year of the LINKS program, so it stands for Linking Youth to New Experiences. Our funding has been stable, I guess, in terms of the state appropriation. But we also know that we're serving more students and costs are going up as well. And so we have increased our ask to the state a little bit for the upcoming year. So you'll see that within the letter that is part of your packet, as well as just some statistics about how students are doing in terms of their academic and career exploration, which is really the focus of LINKS. So you'll see on page 2, there's some highlights. We do an evaluation report of LINKS each year. And we're aligning that report with the blueprint and the expectations around blueprint. So we also do a satisfaction survey to get feedback on student experiences with LINKS and the services. So you'll see all of that in terms of our feedback from students, as well as a decline in our chronic absenteeism at Frederick High School, our graduation rates, and our culture and climate report. And then there's some quotes from last year's survey that are included in there as well. So we would just ask that you, as a delegation, continue to support the funding. And if there's an opportunity for increases in that funding, that you would advocate for that as well. Any questions about LINKS?
Is there, part of the design of LINKS, like that originally was for it to be replicated, and with the blueprint, have you found pieces of it that could be replicated in other school systems to provide others with some of the same advantages?
The one program we were able to replicate, just a small part, is the Twilight program, and it's really not from LINKS, but it is from Heather Ridge. We did that at Thomas Johnson. So in terms of innovation, the basis of that program is a competency-based model for instruction. And so it takes negotiation for teachers to engage in that. And so we just haven't found people ready to do that just yet. And the buses, the transportation, the last period, the supper that's provided, all of those things. So it's been difficult to replicate.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
The only thing I would say is we did request additional funding last year that we did not get. But every year when the governor's budget comes out, our people are right there and then they let us know, yes, it's been there, wasn't up. So we can hope. You have to plant the seed, right?
We have had some
Last 10
from
years.
the state superintendent who's come out, and we've had inquiries from a former state superintendent for Baltimore County to come and watch the program. So I believe there's value in the program. It's just always the money, right?
You'll never get it if you don't ask. So thanks for asking. So we've already started sub-discussion around school construction, but Dr. Lebo is going to give us some additional updates on construction and renovation within the system. Presentation is coming up.
Hopefully I did that right. If folks on the Google Meet, can you see the presentation?
Should be able to. Looks like she shatters.
Perfect. Well, thanks for the opportunity. So we're going to present, I'm going to handle the school construction and renovation update, and then Ms. Clayball and Dr. Suryo are going to handle the blueprint and financial update. And so just want to cover a couple things. Wanted to provide you with an update of our current projects, because obviously there's not only county investment, but state investment in those projects. I want to talk to you about our FY27 state budget, capital budget request, and then our long-term construction and renovation plans. So I wanted to start off with a highlight. I know many of you were at the ribbon cuttings for both of these schools, and we appreciate the support of our board and the state delegation for funding, in particular from the Built to Learn Act for both Valley and Green Valley Valley and Green Valley Elementary Schools. We're able to accelerate both of those projects because of that funding. And if you haven't had an opportunity, we would love to showcase that for anybody and coordinate a time for you to come visit that. So that's the top left is Valley and the bottom right is Green Valley. And then also we've been busy with our limited renovation projects. And you can see we have Ballinger Creek Elementary in the bottom left and Spring Ridge Elementary in the top right, and are really excited about our continued efforts in limited renovations because it really makes a school feel new. It's not just focusing on the systemic projects that need done, but it's upgrading things like finishes and restrooms, and it's really important for the learning environment for our staff and students. So that's sort of a highlight of FY25. As it relates to fiscal year 26, we're busy. As you can see, and again, are very appreciative, this is really hitting many of the demands for both capacity, but also our aging infrastructure. Obviously, Senator Folden and Delegate Miller are very attuned to that with their participation on the school construction work group and understanding where we have challenges as it relates to our aging infrastructure. So we are very excited to be opening Yellow Springs Elementary in the fall of 26. And that followed our typical project timeline from, about 3 years from a design and construction. Really want to highlight for a second our Linganore Creek Elementary, and we'll talk about it specifically in our ask for FY27. The county, there has been a small contribution so far from the state at $3.7 million for that project, but the county has forward funded the entire share of that project so we could open it a year early. We have gone from design to construction to opening will be an 18-month mark. If you're not familiar with the construction world, that's a feat in and of itself, but it has really required considerable partnership, in particular at the county level for things like plan review and coordination, but also at the state with IAC review, as well as the General Services Administration being able to dive into plans quickly and get responsive comments back to us because you can't move forward without those approvals. And so I also know many of you were at that groundbreaking, and we are excited to see you and the governor. He said he never makes a promise a year in advance, but he made a promise he was coming back for the ribbon cutting. So we look forward to hosting all of you again for the ribbon cutting for that project. And then the Middletown Elementary and Middle School co-located replacement projects, that construction project is underway, and we will open in the fall of 27 there. Again, harkening back to the last slide, with limited renovations, we have two projects, Twin Ridge and Hillcrest, that are in design. Both of those projects will start this summer to be able to renovate both of those buildings. And then we talked about the Brunswick High project in terms of its status with pre-design and site evaluation. This is just a timeline snapshot. I always want to put a plug in for our facilities planning team and our capital programs department. They do great work with updating our educational facilities master plan. This is a timeline from that document. It is a wealth of information, not only for our elected officials, but also the general public. Talks about things like housing pipelines, talks about growth rates and where we're seeing needs throughout the county. But this just highlights what we have in the pipeline. It's important to note too that until a project actually has state or county dollars, it can always shift left or right because it's not really locked in until it receives that first dollar. So I did just want to highlight that those are in the out years. We do have an obligation, and it is good planning to outline where we will see needs, but it doesn't. It's always not indicative of where the money will come in. Another area, and are very appreciative of our board and the county understanding our inability to name projects given our growth. And so you will see, as an example, elementary schools 42 and 43. We're not 100% sure today where that greatest need will be. We know based on where our enrollment projections are looking that we will need additional elementary seats, but that could be in the eastern portion of Frederick City as an example, as we see where Brickworks, is an example of a project that's in the pipeline and moving forward. That might be the area where we need capacity. It might be out a little further closer to the Lake Linganore community where we have a site near Gas House Pike and Linganore Road as that development continues to grow. And then we also see even further east areas like the Casey and Calumet properties. We're talking thousands of homes in those two, and add Gordon Mill in there in those homes. It might be in that area. And so we're trying to highlight, we know we have a need, but many of these projects are not predictable in terms of A, the student growth rate that's going to come out of them, and B, what the speed is that they will proceed to open. And so we know there's a need, and those will get refined as we get a little closer to needing the projects. Here is our FY27 state capital budget request in priority order. As we talked about, the top priority is for additional funding to round out the design funding needed for Brunswick High School and to receive the critical local planning approval. So in FY28, we can receive our construction funding from the state there. And then again, highlighting in that sort of center column, the remaining state funding that is part of the state's obligation as part of their approved funding formula for those projects. And so we're making the requests to understand. So the state obviously sees where we have need. Part of the reason, if you're asking yourself on Brunswick, why didn't we want construction funding yet? The quick answer is because we will not be able to get to construction in FY27, and we want to make sure that all of our reimbursement rates are associated with the dollar value that we're experiencing as close to construction as we can, which is a complicated way of saying we don't want to lock in our per square footage cost until we're actually ready to put a shovel in the ground, because that's where the state funding formula locks you in, is when you receive that construction dollar. And then Linganore Creek, we're seeking the local planning for that. We know it's another big ask. Based on the 75% recommendation for 27, currently we're in the roughly 28 million. We hope that holds. But a large portion of that funding will come out of the enrollment growth and relocatable classroom pot of money, oftentimes referred to as EGRC. And so we just want to make sure that we continue to highlight the need, not only for new capacity, but addressing the aging infrastructure. And I think you can see the very nice split just on that slide alone. While Yellow Springs, it sort of kills two birds with one stone. It addresses both an aging infrastructure challenge for us, but also increases capacity in that building. So I sort of talked about this in all of my talking points, but these are our focus areas, really trying to use data to drive all of our decisions. That's why we emphasize and have the privilege of presenting to the board both our comprehensive maintenance plan and educational facilities master plan for review and approval. And both of those documents are also submitted to the state for review and approval as well. With that, before we jump into blueprint, I'm sorry, Dr. I thought you had something to add. Any questions for me?
So I'm learning all about Brunswick today. So when is it considered shovel ready?
When we have a fully completed and approved set of design plans. So through the construction document phase, it's a 3-phase iteration from schematic design through design development through construction documents. And so when we have the construction documents finalized and approved, both at the local level and at the state level, it is considered shovel ready.
So the money that we're seeking this year, assuming we get that, how much longer after that until consider? I know these are hypotheticals, there's variables that kick in, but what are we looking at?
We plan to go out to bid for that project. Pull my calendar. This is the tough time of year for us. I'll be honest. We're closing out a previous fiscal year. We're operating in 26. My team's already thinking about 27. And so we anticipate a full year of design starting next year. And then in fiscal year 28, we will be able to, roughly the spring of 2028, we'll be able to go out to bid on that project, which is why we'll need the construction dollars for the project.
And is that pretty typical, a year for design?
It's a little over a year, 18 months. And for a high school project, it can typically extend to closer to 24, which is why you'll see start at 26. Although we had a little seed money from both the state and the county, so we're a little ahead of the game, but full-fledged design won't start till this spring. So fast forward 2 years, spring of 28, that's when we'll have a finalized set of design plans. We'll go out to bid and likely start precisely as the fiscal year 29 starts.
Thank you.
Delegate Miller?
Yes, again, thank you for everything that we're trying to work out with Brunswick. And congratulations on the elementary school. That is, the 18-month timeline is absolutely amazing. And between the 2 other elementary schools that you guys have been doing and all the renovations, yes, your department has been very, very busy. Question about, I'm assuming you saw the comptroller's report on the statewide facilities, and that about the 80% consider being in need of repairs or actually functionally unreliable. Where is Frederick County in that as far as the statewide facility assessment? Like, where are we as far as percentages? Because we've been working so hard, and the county has been a great partner with forward funding a lot of these projects.
We're doing as a county better than most of our counterparts. But I make sure that I clarify that doesn't mean we don't still have needs.
Right.
But there are many of our colleagues across the state whose infrastructure is, from a conditionals perspective and age perspective, and age is not always an indicator of condition, so clarify on that, but from a conditions perspective, has far greater needs than Frederick County. But the good news is I think the data-driven decision-making that we talked about internally is something that the state has adopted as well, and really give credit to Executive Director Donahue for his work at the ISC of really letting data drive the decision-making as it relates to school construction dollars.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it was a big wake-up call for a lot of people around the state, and it was very informative as far as the cost that we talked about all in the work group, as far as the cost of instruction inflation, and we'll be putting legislation forward again to try to address the construction cost and as far as our aging infrastructure in Frederick County, because if you're going to have a blueprint for education, I really think you should have a blueprint to have actually functional and usable buildings that are safe for our students. And so we definitely need to be addressing that situation. So whatever help, hopefully you guys can help us on supporting that legislation and working with the IAC to get that addressed, because it's a huge need.
I agree and appreciate that. And I don't want to speak for our board, but when they asked for what we believed at a staff level, the state allocation for the capital budget should be, they asked us if we could use real dollars and real data as it relates to current needs and what the actual inflation rate. So what you saw with the 642 million aligns with previous years of them putting an accurate depiction of where they see the state need to be. So that's a real number in terms of what we think the annual allocation would be based on our experience with construction inflation.
And I do appreciate that, because we need to know that, because the inflationary numbers have not been put into the budget numbers. It has not increased. So I think since 2019. So I appreciate the real numbers.
Any other questions about construction before we move on to blueprint? And I'll just say, oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, I think, we had a lot of engaged participation from Delegate Miller, from Delegate Kerr. I think both of our senators, Senator Folden and Senator Karen Lewis Young, participated in that school construction work group at IAC. We all came together and really didn't have anything new to be able to present in terms of the construction, and really spending that time talking about how we balance our growth with our aging infrastructure. And I think Dr. Lebo and his team do an amazing job in terms of maintenance and operations, but there is still the need. And then when we see the continued development, we know that we need to be focused on both of those things. So we appreciate the support, and however we can help advocate this upcoming session, please let us know if it remains a priority for us as a board.
I was just going to say, I don't know if it's for the good of the order or not, but I'll say it anyways. We just don't want like Brunswick High School to be like the Key Bridge, so like the bids to be like accurate in reality, so there's no delays. And I'm not saying you guys would do that. I'm just saying we've seen a lot of that throughout the state. The combination of inflation, hyperinflation with bids that are just not realistic, or failing wage. There's a whole lot of factors that go into making high schools very expensive. Right? They've gotten way more expensive than they used to be. And so we got to get it right initially so that we can get this thing rolling. And so there's no delays. And I know the reason I brought that bridge up is because, they're like, yeah, 2 years, and now it's 5 years. And now it's 3 times the cost. I think it's never going to get built. I mean, it will at some point, but you get where I'm going with it.
Understood. Yes, sir.
I think from the IAC perspective, we've also heard like Frederick County does a great job in terms of that partnership with the state. And so hopefully when they came to some of our ribbon cuttings, the feedback was Frederick County is sort of the gold standard in terms of the school construction that we're doing. So
I will just round this out by just saying, every time I've ever asked Dr. Lebo a question, it's always been very concise. It's always been very direct, and the numbers are there. They speak for themselves. So I always appreciate that, that let the data kind of speak for itself and where we're headed. So that approach, hopefully, numbers are good, not something like they usually did with the Key Bridge. Oh, it'll be about this. No, you're doing some very much data-driven, comparisons and making sure that the numbers are right. I always appreciate that from your office.
I was just going to say, I think history speaks for itself for what Dr. Lebo and his team have done over the years. Every time we've applied for new school funding, he's done a great job. I think he does a great job with us, just going ahead and painting the picture of what delays cost us. So we're aware of what it cost us to delay. We are labor focused. We appreciate, I think, if anything, that work group shined a light on Frederick County. It got AIC people here. A lot of people say, oh, they're now at the ribbon cutting. They think you're good. But actually, it's the opposite. It's an opportunity to continue to advocate with them and show them around our county, and they can see that, yes, we have built have opened 2 new schools this year. You with the ribbon cutting, but we have any other needs. So it's really shined a spotlight on our community, and to have them physically here to see what's happening in this county and engage with Dr. Lebo and our team and understand how focused we are on affordability, but serving our students and our community. So we appreciate all the work on it.
Can I just add, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying kudos to Miller for.
Just a note, and it's premature for us to provide lessons learned, but I did want to plant the seed as we look at Linganore Creek as an example. So being able to get that project under construction a year ahead of time, it's multi-million dollars in savings when you just think of the inflation factor alone. There's some other questions for us just from a constructability piece of we saw more bidders on that project. A lot of that is related to the incredible construction management team that we have working with us on there, but it's also a really enticing business model because they're moving rapidly, and so time is money for them as well. And so as they can move through a construction schedule even faster, it allows them to get off that job and onto another job as well. And so we've already spoken with the county to say, we really want to dive into this lesson learned, but it would require partnership from the state as well on that. If we can save $4 or $5 or $6 million on a project because we're able to get it done faster, we have the DGS reviews, we have the county planning team reviews done in a quick fashion, it can result in even further cost savings. And so just want to plant that seed. I hope to talk more next year with the delegation about that with some lessons learned, but excited about how much that is actually saving us in real dollars as well.
If I could tie something together here, I think this is why the work that Senator Lewis Young and many of you others are doing on the operational side about equitable school funding for Frederick County. You can see what happened when we got our state partners out here to see what's actually happening in Frederick County, where through that work of forming a work group about equitable school funding for Frederick County due to our explosive growth, when we get them out here and they actually physically see it, I think that serves us really well here. So I think that's why the work that's going to be done again this year by Senator Lewis Young and her team to try and get that through, I think that's going to be really important for us, because when the more we shine a spotlight on our community and they physically see the challenges we have with our growth, I think it's nothing but good things for us.
This is your hope.
I have a question. Yes, and ditto to everything, and I could comment on that for a long time. My main question is this meeting being recorded?
Yes.
Thank you, and it will be published in a day or two, because what Senator Folden said, you want to have that.
I knew it.
Complimented.
Merry Christmas.
As well.
I knew where you were going. I did.
But we know that's true. It's just, some of us were at Boundary Creek Middle, and my son went there 30 some years ago, kind of kills me. But that school was brand new. And think back, 3 high schools, I think, were built pretty much in 1 year in the 60s or 70s here in Frederick County. And, you build one high school and then it's years and years before you build another one.
Shall we move on to our blueprint and financial updates?
So it's really hard, as Delegate Miller said, to talk about blueprint and not talk about money. They sort of go together. So we're going to together sort of paint a picture of what that work looks like right now and sort of what our collective interests are and ideas around. One of the things that I think is really important is that philosophically, we're all in on the blueprint. Nobody, I think, would disagree with the idea of increasing access to early childhood opportunities for students through pre-K, paying our educators more, creating college and career pathways for students, resources to support students, accountability for how we're spending the money that we're given. There's no philosophical opposition, but there are real implementation challenges. And I think sort of if I was to answer your question in one sentence, I would say defer, defer, defer. Right. And so I think that's actually not even a full agree. And so, the commitments that we have in place have created, again, it's hard because two things can be true at the same time. You can believe that something is the right thing to do while acknowledging that it's constrained you in a way that is not realistic for the time that you're in. And I think that's how I would describe the blueprint. It is that we love the ideas, the purpose, but it's constrained us from a fiscal perspective where you're having to make impossible choices. You're having to choose between keeping your system running as is. And I say as is, meaning if you're lucky as is, because the dollar that we had a year ago doesn't get you as far in the following year because of inflation and enrollment growth. And really being at a complete standstill for any program enhancements, program expansion, or local interests, right? And so when you think about the idea of when you talk about local control, there are things that are really important to Frederick County residents, to staff, to community members, to students that we would love to develop and expand that we're really just unable to. We are essentially flat funded, if you will, in terms of the practical application of our funding. And so what that means is we're basically just trying to hold on to what we have. There's no opportunity as we begin the work on designing the superintendent's recommended budget to add anything. Not a single additional links program or really revisiting things like class size or other things that people really think are important here locally, because every dollar that we have is sort of doesn't become discretionary anymore. There is no discretionary spending to do that. And so I think the challenge is that we believe in the blueprint, we believe in the spirit of it, we believe in what it's asked us to do. And I will say that we're also very proud of our success with Blueprint. I don't know if anybody watches the AIB meetings like I do, but the thing that I would notice and I would hope is acknowledged is Frederick County is actually across the state, we're meeting or exceeding the Blueprint expectations in every category. We have successfully negotiated a career ladder. We've done our career counseling MOU. Our student achievement is increased in both literacy and math. We've met every obligation, even on our financial reporting, and Ms. Clayball will talk a little bit about minimum school funding in relationship to that. And so because of that, we've received no warnings, we received no notices. We are really constantly affirmed that we're on the right path, but it does come at a cost. And so I think there are things I could certainly give you a list of things that I think get them out of the law, but that would be my own personal opinion. But on behalf of the system, I think I would say that the spirit of it is to maintain and to defer. And I think there are some places where we could talk about categorical spending. I think the challenge that I imagine we'll hear in the legislature, and I don't know how to navigate that conversation, is the idea that as the foundation and other funding categories were intended to increase in proportion to what the expectations were of the law. And so you will often hear as an argument, which is if we're going to defer something, then we should reduce the per pupil. We should reduce the foundation we should use. The challenge of that is that the actual allocations that they've been designed are actually not enough to do what we're doing. And so even if you defer, maybe it sounds incongruent, but if you defer and reduce the funding, we're back where we started. It doesn't actually give us the relief that it's intended. And so I think that's a complexity that I think we have to be prepared to speak to and articulate, both from the LEA perspective, but also from the delegation's perspective, is why would you not reduce the foundation funding that's supposed to increase if you're going to defer an expectation? And it's just because it just costs more to do business and to run our system as is. So I think some of the things that I wanted to just highlight here before I turn it over to Ms. Clayball is sort of what some of that investment looks like from a financial perspective. We are meeting all of our expectations around providing access to pre-K for our Tier 1 students. So Tier 1 are the students and families who are at 0 to 300% of the federal poverty level. They attend pre-K at no cost to the family. We absorb that cost from a funding perspective, and we've been able to provide that expansion, and everyone who wants a seat has received them. And we also have a portion of our community from 300 to 600% of the federal poverty level who are also getting seats in our programs. So expansion of pre-K has been wildly successful. I want to make sure I credit Leslie Fry and her team for the work that they've done there. We've been doing well in terms of educator pipeline. Ms. Clayball, we joke about this. The biggest problem we have is that we actually are filling too many positions, so we have very little salary savings. Our fill rate is actually one of the highest in the state in terms of the number of vacancies. I think I monitor it regularly, and part of my role is to be the chief over human resources. I think we have 36 FTEs open right now across there are some areas, special education instructional assistants tend to be our areas with the most vacancies, but I think our system-wide aggregate fill rate is anywhere from 96 to 98%. And so wonderful celebration, but we don't have much of a fund balance because we don't have much salary savings from that. But we've done a great job. We are a desired employer. We are attracting a lot of career educators. wonderful. People who are worked in other systems want to come here. Many of them live here and are finally making that leap to come and work for us. But career educators also cost more. So our average salary of a new hire has increased significantly because there's a very big difference between hiring a brand new teacher who's just starting out and hiring someone who's been working in another system with a master's degree plus, additional credits. They're more expensive as an employee. College and career readiness, I think Dr. Dyson spoke to this, but our college and career readiness programming as it relates to dual enrollment and CTE is recognized throughout the state. In fact, next week, we are being visited by the AIB. They're doing a site visit of our CTE programming. They're coming to see what we do because we really have developed a reputation. I want to acknowledge Dr. Pearl and her team. Dr. Pearl is retiring. So if you don't have a chance to see her, please send her your best. And she's going to, enjoy traveling and being with her family. But she is really responsible for much of that work, along with Diana Sung. High school-based dual enrollment courses are a success. And many school systems haven't been able to do what Frederick County has done. And so again, success, done a great job, extremely expensive.
And I will just add, it's not just that they enroll, and this is
They're
one
successful
of
in them.
they're successful in the courses. So it's not just we have a high number of students who are enrolled in dual enrollment. They're actually passing, which is what I hope we can talk about more. When we talk about Blueprint, it's always the technical aspects of it, which there are a lot of pieces of that. But we're proud of our students for successfully completing those courses, which I think that's a data point that needs to be studied so that you know whether it's worth the effort, right? So it's not just how many enroll, it's how many can pass the courses.
Yeah, and we do analyze that. We look at their grades and how many have passed. I know a lot of school systems have struggled with this because what they've run into is they've run into students taking the courses, they end up paying the community college for that course, and then the student doesn't pass. And then they're saying, should we be charging people if they fail a course? And what if they want to retake it? That actually has not been a local challenge for us because of some of the things that we've put in place. Additional staff in Title I schools and other wraparound, our community schools have expanded. Our behavior support teachers, our BCBAs, our counselors, we have a lot of supports, our health centers, wildly supportive and really done great work. Again, a really significant financial investment. And then in terms of accountability, I work closely with Ms. Claybaugh around the way in which we report on our spending, but also on all the many reports. I think what were we up to, 121 reports last year?
Oh my, that's low. We were about 185.
I wouldn't say 180 of them are probably coming out of her team. But I think, just sort of the transparency, we are public facing on our website, every report that we do, we're making it accessible and visible to everyone. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the minimum school funding as it relates to that. So just if you haven't had a chance with that in mind, every school system had audience with the AIB and MSDE through September and October. It was a required 3-hour meeting. This was the structure that they came up with to make sure we were doing our job. But of course, we had to be extra. So we put together a whole published report and came in with binders and everything. And we had that meeting on October 8th. And just received our summary, which was very positive about the work we're doing. And so we are meeting all of the 5 requirements so far. I put a question mark on minimum school funding, not because I'm not sure, but because the ball around the minimum school funding conversation continues to move. And so it depends on which day you ask us how we're doing with minimum school funding, because it does continue to move. And that would remain, I think, a legislative interest. I think there's some challenges, because while Frederick County has, I think, done a nice job in many of these areas, when you're designing legislation, as you all know, for the entire state, you have sometimes outliers who drive decisions that maybe it's not meant for a Frederick County scenario, but there are others who need to be held accountable perhaps in different ways. So I think this is a bit of a one-size-fits-all. And so the challenge of the one-size-fits-all, particularly for minimum school funding, which Ms. Claybaugh will talk about, is this idea of how do we budget our resources in our schools, and then how do we account for how those resources are spent. I think we have an obligation to our community and to our stakeholders to show how the dollars are being spent. The complexity of that is the formulas as they've been designed aren't actually telling that story. And it's hard because I think legislatively, people would be reluctant to let go of the notion of minimum school funding as it's currently written, because then it sort of sounds like an out from that accountability. We think that accountability is important, but we actually also think there are other ways to get at it, because really this is about staffing. Our money is about our people. What every school district should be asked to produce is not only their budget and how they've sort of projected their accounting will be spent, how are they spending their multilingual learner spending, their foundation, their comp ed, all of those pieces, but how are they staffing their school? Because if you're a school district who does a one-size-fits-all model for staffing, that's not the spirit of the blueprint. We can show you how our dollars are being spent at the school level, but the formula is wildly sensitive to teacher salary. So in a school with significantly experienced staff, it can look one way, and just one teacher can retire mid-year, and a school no longer is meeting it in another category. In addition, the other complexity of it is when you look at it at the school level, it doesn't account for other funding streams. So actually, as we've run the numbers, some of our schools that are not making minimum school funding are our most resourced schools. There are star schools, our Title I schools, because they have Title I dollars or they have other concentration of poverty money that's coming in. We would have to flush that school with another 100 staff members to make the minimum school funding formula work, which is unrealistic, not only just from a resources perspective, but that's not really what this should be about. But we can tell you that we're spending our money in our schools to serve our kids. And the staffing formulas tell that story. So from a legislative perspective, we hope that there will be some conversation about how to get this right. Unfortunately, I think what the legislature needs to really know that and to be comfortable with that is the waiver process. So that's what people are holding out there. Well, school systems can't do it, they should submit a waiver. Well, the waiver, they've just moved the waiver deadline. We were prepared to submit a waiver on December 1. They've moved it to March 1. But that waiver is really for the getting halfway there mark. I think it'll be in FY27 that you'll really see the waiver story come to fruition. And the other thing, I'll just be candid, I worry about is, people can do lots of interesting things with numbers to tell whatever story they want. And so I think we believe in the integrity of this. We're reporting exactly what we're doing in the ways that we believe serve schools. We refuse to play with those numbers. I'm not suggesting that any one particular place is, but I think when you make it a math problem and not an accountability exercise around staffing, it becomes a little bit, the question is it really accomplishing what you intend? And so it's a very dynamic conversation, and I could talk about it for at length, but I will switch over.
No, continue talking about it in that term. That's great. No, you're doing a fabulous job.
Thank you.
Can I use some of that down there? Because it's amazing.
It'll be on recording.
No, I know. I just want to make sure I got permission on
But
recording.
before you change pictures, I wanted to let us brag a minute. We have the state
Teacher of the Year, yes, Alana, who's on the cover there. Alana, who is not only the FCPS Teacher of the Year, but the state Teacher of the Year. And what a fabulous night we were there when she was awarded. So we'll come back to any questions you have, unless you have some now about.
No, to the senator's point, there's a lot of people even down there that don't understand the impact of minimum school funding and how it works. And even here, there was a lot of things we had to work through that even when I would call the AIB, they didn't know, right? That even some of this stuff was going on and how to account for that in the minimum school funding. So is there a way to, those formulas were just kind of pulled out of the air. There's no metric that you can point to as far as the funding formulas that are used to address the minimum school funding?
Well, I think the per pupil allocations, they were done as part of the adequacy studies that were part and parcel to Kerwin. And those numbers have changed significantly because I think the numbers, had COVID not happened, that's become the wild card that's changed our inflation. It's changed the way we do a lot of different things. It's also changed our students as well. And so I think that adequately focusing on figures that are 10 to 15 years old do not answer questions for 2025, 26. And that's where I would say, I think it would also be helpful if the AIB heard from experts, heard from CFOs, heard from the people who do the work daily. Because one of the questions we were asked candidly during the AIB meeting was, well, if you don't show the minimum school funding, how will we know that you're being successful? Well, we're successful in tier 1s through 4. That's how you know we're being successful. Because when you talk about minimum school funding, we were at our M&S conference, and one of the people said as we were discussing it, where are the kids in this? And that was one of the things. You're right. We're having finance questions. And let me tell you, I love a spreadsheet. I love to parse my numbers. It's what I do. But that's not answering the questions about where the kids are. And part of when we get to the minimum school funding, and we show you 2 schools, which we're going to do here, it doesn't talk about the continuum of services that every child needs. A child who requires multilingual services is not the same in every school. And even the school populations are not the same. There may be a significant multilingual population in one of our schools, but they all happen to be sitting on the continuum where they're 4s and they're about to exit. So putting all of the funding there, so it doesn't give the schools the ability to do what they need to do to meet the needs of the students. We were one of the first systems that had a robust staffing formula that looked at complexity factors. You know this from serving on the board. And we would love to go to a 4th tier because we need the 4th tier to hit the schools that are outliers, the ones that have the significant farm population for free and reduced meals or multilingual populations, because that's the only way that we put in those additional resources that we know that they need. But given the budget constraints, given the growth we've been experiencing and the fact that our funding lags, we haven't had that opportunity. So I think, as Dr. Sergo said, our staffing formula is really where everything lives. It shows you the story and it shows you we're doing what they want us to do. The complexity factors we look up match the funding formula. It matches farm, it matches ML, it matches special education. It looks at student mobility. It looks at all of those things. And so that's really where we think the AIB should be looking. If they want to know the story of funding, that's where you find the story. But it could be a school with 3 ML students and we've had it funded and a teacher leaves halfway through the year. I'm now out of balance. And it's 9 funding categories at 70 schools. So you have to get those points. So that's 630 points. And if I'm off on one, I'm out of compliance. And that's for a mid-range school system. So that's what we're looking at when we're looking at those data points.
I just want to say the one other piece of it is there are some school systems, many of them, which were doing one-size-fits-all staffing. And who were perceived, some accurately and some not, really sort of like not showing return on investment. And so a lot of this is about a return on investment conversation. And so we can show the return on investment in our outcome data. And I think there's a challenges. Now, the optics of the waiver process are what we struggle with, because the answer we often get is, well, just apply for the waiver and you can tell this story in your application. You can explain, well, we didn't meet it here because of the one teacher retired, and we didn't meet it here because, the enrollment changed. And it's a lot of work to do the waiver, particularly for Ms. Claybaugh's team. My role is certainly much more around the engagement, but the optics is what it says to the public, because they don't understand. It's like, you're not spending the money right. So then you've got a messaging issue, which is, and so we think the budget matters, how you budget your money matters. And then your actuals, which is what your waiver is based on, is so highly variable. We think we should be reporting minimum school funding. We think that makes sense. All of your money should be in your schools to the extent that it makes sense. But you also still need to run your school system. There is a role for central office. There's a role for having Ms. Claybaugh have a team, as small as it is.
There's a role for supporting your retiree health care benefits,
right,
which for us is $20 million.
Right. We have to have money to do some of those other things. But for a school system like us, where over 90% of our schools are meeting it in the aggregate, and then also say, but we need a waiver because we've got this bunch of schools that aren't meeting it in one category or 2 categories, becomes an accounting exercise. And that's not really, I think, what the spirit of this was supposed to be.
So this is some of the budget context that we're living in, and none of this is new information. You've all heard this information before, so I'm just gonna pop forward. So this year, as we look to 27, we'll be looking at Linganore Creek opening, maintaining our current programming and class size, of course, continue to recruit and retain, and then also enhancing the well-being and engagement of our students and staff. So what does minimum school funding mean? It means that 75% of these categories should be spent at your school level. We've always been doing that, but we haven't necessarily coded it that way. About 7 years ago, probably a little longer than that, when the Every Student Succeeds Act came through, we had to start coding things out to schools in ways that we've never done before. And so that was a huge lift. So we were already partway there. And then this came in. And so the other thing to remember is it's always based on your previous year's enrollment. So next year, even if I had everything perfect, we would have to seek a waiver because there's no enrollment at Linganore Creek. So you have to seek that waiver for that. And the schools, Oakdale Elementary School, will have significantly less students because they're going to Linganore Creek now. So that's this. I think there's a misnomer that it creates a per pupil funding formula for students, and it doesn't account for the continuum of services. And it requires, we do a monthly report to the AIB and MSDE by school, by funding program. So this is what a minimum school funding looks like. So these are 2 FCPS schools. They have about the same enrollment, and their foundation funding is about the same because that's what support K to 12 enrollment. Their comp ed, which is based upon your number of free and reduced meal students within your schools. So you can see School B has a larger farm population. School B also has a larger multilingual population, and School A has a larger special education population. So between that, you can see the change. If you just look, and this is only 4 of the funding categories, but you can look and see what the cost is or what the PPA is for those schools. And when we think about our schools, we always have to think that there has to be a minimum amount of funding or a minimum amount of staffing to run a school. You need a principal. You need an administrative secretary. You need X number of teachers. You need to be able to, and so some of our schools that are not as high in comp ed or multilingual may look to be over allocated. And so that becomes a problem because you have to provide the minimum amount to the schools so they can continue to function, because we want to support the programs that are important. We want to support the class size that's important. We want to be able to offer that diverse education at those schools and the same type of classing. And so this is our statistics from last year. Nearly 93% of our schools met minimum school funding when we looked at the aggregate. Only about 11% of our schools met it when we looked at each program individually. And so that's where this disparity happens. So we will be creating waivers for 60 schools in fiscal year for this fiscal year because we're not meeting it as we look at these programming. But what we are doing, like ML is one of the things that we've looked at. Our ML population in fiscal year 25, nearly 9% of our students exited ML. They were able to test out. So we know that we're being successful and providing the resources that they need. And so this is why the aggregate becomes so important to us, because it's doing is this a resource exercise or is it an accounting exercise? And I think at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a resource exercise. They want to see the funds in the schools. And that's what makes sense to us too.
Can you explain the aggregate piece versus the individual school piece? Because what goes into the aggregate versus the minimum school?
So basically what we do for the aggregate is those 9 funding categories, we add them all up. And we say, this is what your minimum school funding is. And we look at what we've expended. And as long as we're 75% or higher, they've met it. And so, when you think about things like, what does a student who receives farm benefits need? It could be a myriad of things, or it could be nothing. They could be a student that's successful academically and don't require support, or they could need all of the things. Or they could be a foundation student who needs more support, but they haven't been identified in one of these categories. So for us, when we look at it in the aggregate, it allows us to ensure that the funding is, that we're having adequate funding at the school building to meet the needs as they're seen. And we use data to drive what the needs are in the building. And so that's really, it's really that simple as the math problem. We add all the things up. If you meet 75%, we're golden. But then we have a bigger spreadsheet that shows each category and what the spending is in each category. And some of the things are like, for ML, we co-teach. So do we count half the teacher in ML and half the teacher in foundation? Well, there are 3,500 teachers. That's a lot of things to move around. And so again, it becomes the accounting exercise and not the resource exercise. Yes, sir.
Who gave the number of 75% of meeting?
That is what's written in the law.
It's interesting. Well, I mean,
And it's 75% for each category at the school level. So when Heather talked about us having to do a waiver, it's a waiver for every individual school that doesn't need it.
And at category.
And the category. So you could have, right. So it's like, it's sort of, it could become all that we do. It could be, that could, spend all of your time either coding things or filling out waiver requests.
Is that part down more into a regulation, like a guidance thing that you've been given as far as the categories, or is that overall in the blueprint? Because
Well, the blueprint does specifically in 5-234 state that you have to meet those individually except for special ed. And the reason why they don't do it for special ed, and let's just face it, is because special ed is woefully underfunded. Last year, we spent about $99 million more than we were funded for special education.
We know we'd never meet it.
So we know that we'll meet it without
Nobody.
even blinking on it at the school level. So that if there's one line, and it actually says that if you just added the other numbers, because each, I guess it's A, B, C, D are the funding programs. If you just added all the funding programs to that one line, we'd be golden because it would be aggregate.
And then it's important to note, across the state, all the CFOs, to a large extent, are behind this aggregate notion, but we have been told that there is not a legislative interest in pursuing it, and the AIB does not have any interest in pursuing it. And so they said, well, once everybody submits a waiver, that'll prove the point that it doesn't work, and then we'll revisit it. But there's not an appetite for revisiting it until the waiver process initiates.
they keep delaying.
How much training and how much, I mean, obviously, Blueprint came out and, we're asking for reports and we've got certain standards and things like that. Somebody who works with numbers all the time, especially with statistics, obviously, sometimes you have great intentions of until you figure out, hey, we're missing a number, which sounds exactly what you're saying, is we're kind of missing that foundation. Are we building on what we started? And are we looking at this and we making sure that it's functional for all 24 jurisdictions, not just Frederick? So has that changed as far as some of the guidance and some of the training? I hear they're trying to get some of that with the waivers. But do you feel like you're just completely left out there in a field wandering around trying to figure this one out?
So I think, unfortunately, part of the minimum school funding is that there's still other reporting requirements that have to be fulfilled that don't match this. So we're trying to ensure, because those other funding requirements can withhold funding from us as well. And they haven't changed the financial reporting manual for the state yet to match this. So we still have to answer those questions. So there's a little disconnect in regards to the questions that we're being asked to answer. In regards to training or technical assistance, there's been some, but every LEA has a different finance system. So we all do things a little differently technologically, we all do different things. We've had significant.
I work for the retirement, so I'm fully aware of all your different.
Yes, and there's also been
Trust me, I know.
There's also been significant turnover in the number of CFOs in the state. I think we're about halfway to new CFOs. Every LEA is very different. There are, my fiscal services team that works on us, there's 3 of us, myself and 2 other people. in a larger LEA, it might be 15 or 20 people. And so, but we all have to answer the same questions, and we all have hundreds of thousands of lines of code that go into answering this question. I don't know if I've answered your question, but there has not been, because it can't really be one size fits all technical assistance. It's been, here's the power.
Get together? I mean, is there a?
You guys,
Every week, every week.
I'm talking about officially where you're getting together and you're.
Yes. CFOs meet every Thursday. Every other Thursday, we meet with the AIB
And we meet.
and
every
with
other
MSDE. And the Blueprint coordinators meet monthly with the AIB and MSDE. So we've talked about it.
Is there a report from those meetings? I mean, not just minutes, but is there something that is?
I think the function of those meetings, Heather has a set that she goes to. I have a set that I go to. They're with Job Alike. The AIB and MSD come in for those meetings. I think they would describe it as technical assistance. We would describe it as answering questions to make sure that we do the work that they've asked.
I would say you're assessing the system. You're assessing what it is that we put and we're trying to improve.
Yeah, they want to make sure that we meet the expectation.
And if you come out with things and this is common, then something should change or be altered. Now, I know that folks don't necessarily, you don't want to just change everything each and every time, because then you have nothing that you're measuring it against. But obviously, if everybody is coming up with, or it's not quite measuring what we are asking, or.
Well, and the Maryland Financial Reporting Manual is in COMAR. And it has not been updated. And in the Blueprint legislation, it was supposed to be updated. And it has not yet happened. So again, we have competing priorities that exist. And we still have to live by the Financial Reporting Manual, which says this is the way you account for things. Plus then we have the AI, this minimum school funding, which accounts for the exact same things in a different way.
And don't give us more people because it'll take away from.
And the AIB has the biggest stick because they can withhold funds.
Right.
And so you have to be very careful about passive or active resistance to what you're being asked to do, because there's a fiscal implication for your school system if you aren't able to do it. And if you watch the meeting recently, there were a number of school systems have gotten warning letters for withholding of funds because they have not been able to do some of this work.
And for us, if we didn't do the waiver process in fiscal year 26, because it's 25% of your new funding, it equates to a little bit over $4 million for us, which is a significant amount of money, even in a $970 million budget, because we have very slim margins. We only have about 1 to 1.5%.
Well, we're growing too. So every single year, that makes it even harder.
So we have 40 minutes for delegation members until we have to wrap up. There are some questions that I know some members want to get to, and we appreciate the board actually sending out some of the answers, which certainly saves some time. The last thing I have is, and I appreciate your candidness on your personal opinion about the blueprint. This is one of the most controversial subjects during the legislative session, certainly was the last year, early this year. Does the board ever plan on making an official public statement about it?
You'd have to.
And I don't need an answer today, but I will tell you that same story every year, right? We get it. A lot of the things we agree with, can't afford it, all these issues. So my question is, are people actually voicing that in your MABE meetings or the AIB meetings?
We heard from Sam. Dave was there last year testifying. Yes, absolutely.
We ran out of time when we all went to testify last year.
I'll tell you, say something, see something, say something. This year, because of the blueprint, they enacted the largest tax increase in Maryland history. We got the same hole 9 months later. So, these problems are going to keep percolating, and then it kicks into other issues that we have, and it's all about the money. So we appreciate the board if you come to the conclusion that at this point we can't afford it, maybe we should pause it or defer, whatever language you want to use. We appreciate you voicing that. So it's not just some members sharing that. We rely on the subject matter experts in the community. You guys are on the board. You're seeing this stuff every day. We rely on your.
Just to clarify, they are not the board.
I understand.
We are. We're the elected ones. They're the ones that have to work, and they're being very honest, but they deal with what they're given.
I get you, but they're doing all the talking. So
And they
I mean,
advise you guys.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, last session, Delegate Miller and I had a couple of phone calls. We as a board are happy to come, and we do, to Annapolis to testify, to offer feedback. If you are considering legislation that focuses on addressing any of these issues, we are happy to be there and to partner with you and talk about what makes the most sense with the feedback from our experts. But as the board, we're happy to do that and to support those efforts truly, because I think we all share the same goal in terms of supporting our students. And so however we can, and in a number of different ways, we've tried to advocate. And it has felt a little bit like it's falling on deaf ears, to be quite honest, in some ways. And so,
Not with us, right, but that's what we
not
face.
with you, not with
Yeah,
you.
and that's what we face in Annapolis. We
Yes.
need you all, I mean, it's one thing, MABE is actually the party of no down there. MABE actually opposes everything. So in my committee, they pretty much oppose everything. And our chair has even said that to them. So as far as MABE, ZAM was much more instrumental as far as giving actual blueprint changes that could be functional and work. And they got a lot of pushback for it down there. So for us, it would be very helpful if you as a board, that's why I asked the question at the beginning, what can we do to help legislatively coming from your experts that are impacting Frederick County, that are hurting our students? What do we need to do to help fix it from our Frederick County perspective? That's what we want to do down there, and make those, whether or not it's going to be legislatively acceptable, that part, I'm fine with if it's not, but we need to call attention to the problem. And we need to have experts that are willing to step up and step beside us and say, this is where it's impacting our students. And we don't have now the money to innovate. We don't have money to keep being the amazing Frederick County public schools that everyone knew before. And if we keep down this road, here's what we got. You also have your blueprint fund. As I was saying, it is collapsing. There is no more blueprint. That is going to come out of operating down there at the state. And so when you're talking about ROIs and you're talking about changes, we need to make some big changes before 27 happens. So,
I was like,
no, it's great. I'm happy to.
just get started.
Yeah, I haven't even gotten to my questions.
So I would just, once again, I want to thank the board for providing answers to some of the questions that some of the members posed. And like Senator Folden, I know he's got some specific ones. If we could just dedicate maybe the majority of the final part of the meeting to that, and then that way we can keep everybody on the right time.
So obviously, we've been a couple minor, this is probably not going to be on the Christmas card list. Okay. But I have some questions because there's still growing concerns and there's frustration amongst the Brunswick community. And when I saw you at Dr. Dyson, when I saw you at the opening of Valley Elementary School, the ribbon cutting or whatever it was, you said at that time, be like within 10 days, we'd be hearing something and the families would be hearing something. They haven't heard anything. So, and if what you're saying is that they would have noticed something is by the one person that got moved, that's not the answer if that was it. Because there's a real accountability problem here. And this is dealing with the assault in the locker room at Brunswick High School. And so every time we try to talk about this, we get shut down with, oh, this is an HR problem or this is that. I mean, I'm happy to go down there and make teachers as accountable as law enforcement and put cameras in every classroom and have their HR files open for public review because they handle their kids, the most precious item we have in our community, more so than police. So I'm happy to champion that if that's what needs to happen. The problem is this is a lack of procedural conduct by administrators that failed to follow clearly written policy, as I understand. And we still have the same principal there. We still have the same coach, and with the mandatory reporting guidelines, that failed horribly. That was a Friday afternoon assault. Police were notified. Nobody made any reports or anything. Nobody, the principal didn't even meet with them until Tuesday. I'm not even going off notes here. This is how much I've had to review this with people calling me. I looked at your own guidelines as far as board investigations and procedures. It says 10 days on the one that was most recently updated. It happened in April. What is the outcome? Is it finished? Is the investigation completed? Has discipline been handed down? I don't even need to know a specific person.
The plan has been addressed. Yes,
So you're saying it's done?
it is done.
Okay.
We have a couple of Title IX components that are not finished.
I would imagine so.
That's it. And litigation.
Okay. So I guess I just want to make you aware then because there's a lack of confidence in the investigation by the county school board, but your investigative team, I guess, whatever, your administrative investigators. So I'm referring this to the Inspector General's office for investigation.
The General's office has already reached out and requested.
Beautiful. So they got me already. Awesome.
Yeah, and I told you, remember I told you that when we saw each other and had the conversation, that they had notified us, but nothing else had happened.
Yeah, right. So I'm wanting to reach back out to them. So you're saying they have reached out?
They have reached out, they have requested records, we have started providing them, they asked for them on a rolling basis. We should have our production completed to them by the end of the week.
I was gonna say, why are they asking for them on a rolling basis? They would have reached out to you 2 months ago if it's when I saw her.
No, they just recently.
They just recently,
They gave us notice.
They gave us notice, we asked for additional time, they agreed and said, but if you can provide it on a rolling basis, we would be happy to accept them that way, so we started our production of.
So this is poorly, from top to bottom, poorly managed. An assault that happened in April with no resolution by the time school started in September is not a satisfactory investigative timeline by anybody's imagination when it involves our kids. That's all I'm going to say on that. And the community outcry was ignored. And now we have another one that's happened with a special education student or special education staff member. So that's one of the things I know that Delegate Miller and I have spoken about, and we're wondering where you guys are going to be at because we're going to be authoring legislation to require cameras in special education classrooms. So are you guys in support of such a measure?
We are, and I think we provided some information about that. I said publicly, and so did the board, that we have interest. We've been moving along as we work with our negotiating partners. So,
Negotiating partners. I mean, yeah, you have interest, you have liability of interest. So
I'll just chime in. Like, we were looking at putting cameras in classrooms. Last time there was an incident, with the restraint and such. And so, I mean, this is, I don't know, 5 years ago when I was back here bringing that up, different crew here, but so I will question, so is there an active litigation against FCPS related to the issue in Brunswick? Okay, so that probably has an impact on what people can say about it.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out.
So I would, did you?
Second one, is there active litigation at the Oakdale Middle School as well?
It's currently under investigation by law enforcement, so.
So we can publicly offer my.
And we aren't updated on it, so.
I think that's something important to point out too, is that the sheriff's department asks us to pause our investigation because they don't want us interfering with their investigation. Because they don't want us talking to someone and the stories change. So if they're doing a criminal investigation, it takes priority and they ask us to pause any investigation that we might do internally.
Well, and I'll just say, I mean, I think what Senator Folder was getting at is there's certainly a legal procedure that is generally followed, but just on doing what's right, how is it that something like this could occur so long ago? And, the parents of the victims, they're asking the representatives for like, what's going on, it just doesn't seem right. And so, policies and procedures aside, these are just the basic questions that people want to know. How could this happen? Who's been held accountable? What's the FCPS doing about it? And And if the only answer is, well, we can't talk about it, then it further creates issues. And then you compound it with another thing. And again, it's a big school system. I get it. But
You should have no more important issue within your school system than that at that very moment. And it should never have taken 5 to 6 months for an administrative investigation, because there was no criminal investigation against your administrators or staff. That was all against students. So there's zero reason why you all shouldn't have done that in a timely fashion.
the only thing I would just say is I would ask maybe on behalf of the whole delegate, just appreciate up-to-dates on what's happening with those instances. When you're permitted to answer, give an update, we'd like one on those things so that we don't have to reach out.
But they're not going to give one because it was always behind the veil of HR. It's an HR issue, which is why I'm talking about legislatively doing something that would put teachers in the same loop as law enforcement. That you don't get protected HR records. And if you're doing things that are a continual problem, the public should know that.
So I have something, that goes along with that, following up on that, because it's a big issue. So what does, and I appreciate the information you provided, but what does being a mandated reporter mean to FCPS? So when events like Brunswick and what happened at Oakdale, that should have fallen under Maryland mandatory reporting law and your board policy 418, saying that these events must be reported to law enforcement or CPS, and that just reporting it to a supervisor is not enough. CPS must be contacted directly. Written documentation must be submitted within 48 hours. And as per your own statement, early reporting prevents harm and ensures safety and well-being of students. And it is the legal and ethical duty of not just FCPS employees, but also our volunteers, our coaches, and any other caring adult that works with our students. So if these were mandatory reporting incidents, or if we have other mandatory reporting incidents, this is not just about reporting for licensure removal. It's not just about a Title IX investigation, and it's not even about reportable offenses, which the legislature has been very active in looking at. Last session, we had multiple bills on reportable offenses in schools because students are getting hurt. So where are we? This is about public trust. In a lot of ways, it's about restoring public trust and the ethical and legal duty of FCPS to protect kids above and beyond. And so that's where we're failing students and families in Frederick County. They are entrusting their precious children to us every single day. And so when we talk about investigations being paused, the law enforcement investigation on some of these things should have been happening first if it was a mandated reporting situation. And so where we're having this disconnect between what's a reportable offense, what's an on-campus, what's an off-campus, I think the public would be astounded by what the school system does try to handle on its own. But there are already laws in place. So that's the conversation I would like to have either now or in the future is what does mandated reporting mean to FCPS? Because you are all mandated reporters. And whether it's you're reporting a family's coming to you with an incident or with you suspected incident in a family. If it's another student, if it's a staff member, if it's a coach, whatever it is, it all falls under that mandated reporting on abuse. So how does that work? How can we shore it up? And then because it's already law, that's already law. We don't have to change anything as far as reportable offenses. And then the other piece to that is, well, the pre-employment review on making sure.
Hold on one second.
Yeah, but anyway.
I want to touch base, and I just want to close the loop on the report. One of the things that really bothers me about what happened in Brunswick is that this student was re-victimized by your own actions as the administrators, because this student was told that when he went to lunch that he had to eat lunch because he wasn't safe. And instead of removing or moving the children that were the suspects in this and moving them to somewhere else, the child that was the victim in this was removed and told to eat lunch with a teacher, thereby re-victimizing and embarrassing that child. That child was told that while the investigation was going on, and the night that child reported this, was sent home or told he could go back to practice, but was sent home while they continued their practice. I'm putting this out there because by the system and the failure of the administrators on your team, This child was re-victimized repeatedly. When they had classes that were the same as these assailants, the child was told, well, you can change your classes, but we're not going to move them. That's a failure on anybody's spectrum. And I want that out now for everybody to understand how bad it was that this administration, that you only disciplined this one person apparently, and it wasn't quick, but they're still overseeing this. And the staff there are the ones, because of my relationships in that community, because I coached youth football and basketball and softball out there all those years, they entrust me with this information. You've got problems within that own building still, and you're failing to acknowledge and handle them. Because the way that they handled that after the incident is as much of as an embarrassment and a disrespectful act by your team to that person administratively as the assault, because you re-victimized them. And
Senator, can I just respond just quickly in terms of the feedback? And then I think we probably need to move on because again, we can't offer specifics on the investigation. I mean, I think that you are also hearing one perspective from what has happened, and that's a valuable perspective.
I'm hearing it from this. I'm hearing it from staff of FCPS. How's that? I'm not hearing it from naysayers on the street. I'm hearing it from your employees who should be deemed given whistleblower protection, but haven't been. But they're complaining and concerned because of the lack of oversight and management and application of the policies in place to keep them and their students safe. All right. Thank you.
So, and Delegate Miller brought up a point, which I think will probably fall under the fold of active investigation, litigation, probably can't comment on pre-employment screening of that person in particular, but noted.
What your question is?
Pre-employment was actually about even something that's going on at Hartford schools. And it's not that these other counties are providing examples that we need to either make sure can't happen here or find out if they do. As far as the pre-employment screening, the Hartford County teacher that was hired as a long-term sub and then as a full-time teacher in August had 15 felony counts of tax evasion and collecting $215,000 in fraudulent overtime payments as a Baltimore City School police detective. And so while they were under felony investigation, they were hired full-time and then they admitted guilt in October of that year. And so their stance is that they followed things as far as their pre-employment screening. So mine is what would need to change legislatively to prevent that from happening? And could someone be hired that is under a felony investigation for even things like rape, sexual assaults, child sex abuse, or be a long-term sub? Does that show up in pre-employment?
So the state law only requires fingerprint. So that's your first answer. That's the requirement.
Okay.
We are doing 6 other things in addition to that we have local decision to do that we think are important. And we started making sure they were done when Ms. Wynn and I came in 2022.
Okay.
So we screen against the Child Sex Offender Registry. We look at judiciary case search. We look to look for charges. We look through the NASDAQ, which is the teaching licensure system. So if we do a whole bunch of things, what's going on, I don't want to comment on another LEA, that type of a person would not get hired here. We would catch that.
Okay.
But that is what we do here. And many of the things we do, other systems do not do. Some do parts of them, some do others, but we have a very comprehensive, if we get a hit on someone's fingerprints, it's reviewed by a team. And they go and they figure out if you could not get a job because you can't get a job if you committed a crime against children or you're being charged with a crime against children.
Well, being charged and convicted. I mean, that's what the difference.
Charged or convicted. Convicted. You're right. Yes.
You use the word investigated. So be
Charged.
Well, it was a felony. They were under a felony investigation.
Yes.
Correct.
It's in one of those databases that I mentioned. We would see it and
Come up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
For that one, but yes.
Okay, all right. So
So Dr. Solomon, just to be clear, The only requirement is to do a fingerprint background?
That's the state
That's the law.
Thank you.
Yes.
To answer your question.
Thank you, that's perfect.
He's gonna
We
hit his
go way
bill
above
limit here.
They tried, interestingly, they tried last year through the legislature to get the NASDAQ, the national, I forgot what it stands for, but off the top of my head. But they tried to get it passed, but there's a cost to it. But it's not that expensive, but we pay for it out of our HR budget to be a member of this national database. But they didn't, every time something has a fiscal note, it gets a different reaction. And so
Delegate Fair and I actually worked on that to try to get that
I
through.
think it's a wonderful, we want to use every resource that's available to us. And to answer your question, the people who are here and we went through, and I can say anything to you that I've said publicly, every single individual we went back and looked at, met our background screening in our specialized programs. We went and checked everyone in every school. So background screening, unfortunately, is not often a measure of potential to offend. And so it's not a failure at the background screening level.
Thank you.
But that's why it's important for us to be able to ask you those questions and get answers in advance because, again, what is the state law? Where is it lacking? What do we need to do? And how are you doing things differently to make sure those things don't happen?
Can I just add one thing? And just doing research on this particular issue across the country, right? Background checks are after something has happened. That's when it becomes part of the report. Most sex offenders are not caught and have a report until they've been offending for perhaps 15 to 20 years. So this particular position in our schools doesn't have a minimum years of experience requirement, for instance. So I would say if you're going to look at this and if you're really trying to target sex offenders and that sort of thing, you need to kind of look at it differently, not just from a background report perspective. All right.
Certainly more to come on that one. So the next one just is somewhat broad, but certainly important about new public comment policy and just some freedom of speech concerns. So look, I'll just say this, as an elected official, you subject yourself to scrutiny, certainly public scrutiny. Nobody likes it, right? Sometimes that comes with the territory, and you certainly subject yourself to differing opinions. That also comes with the territory, unfortunately. And so obviously we all learned of this new policy. And look, nobody likes to get heckled. I get it. But the concern, at least from my perspective, is, that's why I was 2 minutes late because I had to show them my driver's license to come in the building here. But it raises some concerns from my perspective. I mean, in Maryland, you don't have to show an ID to vote,
right?
But you have to show an ID to come into a board meeting. And I don't know if an ID, to be honest with you, would have changed the trajectory of probably the concern implemented the policy to begin with, because I think that individual has an ID and lives locally here. So I'd like maybe a board response to whether we really need to be going down this road on that point. And then the second point, and I'll tie it in, and I won't get into the specifics, but I think everyone knows, I was really disappointed as a parent to get 2 emails because I have 2 FCPS kids. And I got a public, I don't know what you want to call it, retribution, a public statement from Board of Education criticizing a member of the board for a comment that he made. And my question to that individual was, did you guys vote on that? Was there an open meeting where you had a discussion and the board said, we're going to vote on making this decision to put out a statement? And I don't think that occurred. And so as a parent, one of 50-some thousand or maybe 100,000 people in the county that all got that email that was criticizing this member for, maybe giving an opinion, I was disappointed in that as well. Because one thing that is great about Frederick County is it's certainly a politically diverse county. You guys are in the business of school board. It's confrontational. You get people coming in from all sides. You get people from all sides, all different perspectives, very opinionated, very passionate. God bless you for serving on the school board. But I was disappointed as a parent to see those emails criticizing, a member for his comment, and then trying to understand the context of how do you come to that decision to send out that email to parents who maybe agreed with his comment. I don't know. So maybe if somebody wants to address those 2 things, I know it's somewhat broad.
You're looking at me, but I'm not on the board.
Anybody?
I'm looking at me, I'm maybe because I know the answer.
The leader, the
You
fearless
have
leaders
to
here.
show ID to register to vote. Okay, so that's that. And we have to show ID when we come to visit in Annapolis.
Get it.
Yes.
Well, I can't get in your building without
To get in the building, they
To
do.
register to
I
vote.
can't get in your building. without
Yes.
No, I never had to show
No,
up.
I'm pretty sure there was like a superintendent
voter.
who
But I'm just-
registered to vote.
I don't wanna- I don't even wanna-
Well, we're not gonna.
I don't want to,
argue about
I don't really want to
registration
conflate
vote.
the, I don't want to conflate those issues. There are two different separate issues. The part about bringing people in through our main office and sending them through our Raptor system was an overall safety decision by the board. That was a safety issue based upon information we were receiving from people attending the meetings, that they felt unsafe. So as a board, a full board, we made the decision to adjust our entry processes. And we've actually received very few complaints regarding that entry situation. We have received Open Meetings Act complaints in which we just had one decision come down to our side that supported the position that we've taken.
Position, the policy?
The
Yeah.
identification.
Both the policy
Both
and
the policy and
identification.
our public comment identification. So to date, we have support. And there could be more complaints, levied, who knows? But to date, OCEMB has favored what we've done by policy. In particular, the outside entry was purely not, it wasn't a response to necessarily to comment behavior. It was a response to members of the community that were coming to us and saying they felt unsafe.
And I did see, and I want to bring that up, and this maybe helps you, but there was an individual that I think was physically accosted here.
Correct.
And which I think.
And that played a part in why we eliminated that as an entry point.
Understand.
And we wanted to be more diligent at ensuring that everyone who attends here feels safe. And
So is the ID related to the person speaking, or is it related to entry and safety?
the ID for entry are two separate policy issues. ID for entry, come in, through our Raptor system, get your badge, you come in. The ID or proof of residency for the county is a separate issue for registering to speak. That was a decision that we made, again, based on some public input, that there were members of the community that didn't like public, I mean, we only have a limited time to take public comment. We can't, there are cases where we could take public comment all night, but we do have work to do. And what we did receive from some of our members of our public is there were people from outside of our community taking up valuable slots to speak. So we had a number of our members of the community just say, why don't you just limit it to taxpayers, business? I mean, we went as deep, we tried to go as deep as we could. Taxpayers, business owners, residents. We're looking at maybe adjusting it to immediate family members, because we have had a conversation about grandparents wanting, but these are areas that's what policy is, a living document. We'll review it again. We're going to see how these things work out, and we're going to continue to review our policy and adjust. But we want to make sure members of this community that our decisions directly impact have the opportunity to address our board.
I think also it's not necessarily clear in the policy is when we talk about the Raptor system and the need to do the ID, it's actually just, it's the same for the school. If you're going to enter a school, elementary school, middle school, you have to give an ID. You don't just get to walk around the school. You have to register with the front office.
Every facility
And all of our FCPS facilities.
Yeah.
So,
And I listen,
It also allows us to know who's in the building. If there's a fire drill or if there's an incident inside this room, we know who's here
and that's the
because of the
safety
Raptor
piece as
system.
well. Yeah.
I don't think the issue is more with the Raptor system as far as showing that. And again, I'm in favor of showing ID at certain points. However, what we get a lot of times in Annapolis is that it disenfranchises people. So if you do have people that are, which again, I don't believe, but that is what prohibits a lot of our voter ID laws from being passed, is the disenfranchised. So you're a school system where public comment, the ability to address their public officials should be open equally and balanced and accessible to everyone. So what do you do if someone doesn't have an ID that is in those and wants to publicly speak?
Then we accept another form of identification that identifies them as a resident of Frederick County.
Which is, and do other people know that? Is that written
It's
out?
listed in our policy.
A non-picture ID?
A non-picture ID? I thought it said governmental ID.
A non-picture, so no picture with a piece of paper that says you pay a bill?
There's two issues, because the Raptor, you do need a driver's license.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I do not recall, specifically, if there's an option for people who do not have a driver's license to get around the Raptor system. So that's to just generally come into the building. So I don't know what the option is. If you don't, if you can't come in, you can't give public comment. So I don't know specifically what that option is to get around that. The other thing then is the pre-registration for public comment, which required some, and I opposed that when we did it, so.
We have an immigrant population that may not have IDs.
And that's actually, I've heard a lot from that population, that they are not happy with that. It's confusing, and that they are also struggling.
Ironic.
Yeah,
So,
very.
yeah, so
Very
that's
ironic.
something.
And I'll just say,
So you limit some people's speech because you're trying to address one person that's really a pain in the school board's.
And how do you balance, when you pre-register, how do you balance? I mean, we pre-register, but we let everyone speak down there.
Correct. There's a public comment, and that's for people that walk in the room.
Yeah, so how do you balance out for, against?
Concerns come not so much from the security perspective.
Yeah, we understand.
We understand, securing elementary schools, arming SROs, I'd be good with that too. So the concern, but the concern that I'm raising specifically is I want to make sure that security component doesn't get used as an excuse really to limit speech. And that's the concern that I'm raising today, is that, and I'll leave it there, but certainly we're all subjected to things we don't want to hear. It's probably a good thing, to hear conflicting sides.
And that plays no role in this, because as you pointed out, it's not preventing that. It's not what we added. If you want to talk about that, what we added to our policy was a decorum policy. We added decorum. This has nothing, these are not related. I know Sean Porter. I've known Sean Porter for years. I knew he had an identification for Frederick County. Let's be clear about that. So it wasn't to eliminate Sean Porter from our meetings. What it was, we did put into our policy decorum. We put that in. That has nothing to do with the other parts of the policy
you've limited
in
who
which
can
we
speak.
talked about identification.
Limited who can speak.
It's not limited. I would love to hear from people who have been limited not to speak.
Limited who can speak by virtue of a policy that eliminates a certain class of.
Is that, you're gonna have to share, you're gonna
population.
share with me what that class is.
Yeah, the immigrant population.
They could supply other documents that show that they are Frederick County residents if they chose to
With a
speak.
picture on them, because I thought that was part of the thing. There had to be a government ID with
Unless
a
they're
picture.
undocumented.
They have to get in here again. You have to have a picture.
We'll leave it
Yeah,
there.
I mean, if we're gonna go down that
No,
rabbit
no.
hole, we could be here all night.
The last thing I'll say, and this is the other part, that's why I gave a two-part thing, was just about.
Because I want to be clear, you're supporting undocumented immigrants speaking at our meetings?
Nice try. All right, so the freedom of speech thing is, personally, I would just say it appeared there's been some concerns. That's all I'm going to say, and I'll leave it there. And then the other thing was about the email that went out to all the parents. And again, it's your email system. I just was curious as a parent and also a policymaker, who authorized the board to make a statement on behalf of the board criticizing one particular member on behalf of this. Was that a vote? And look, if you don't want to tell me, you don't have to tell me, but I saw that twice, because I have two kids, two emails. And I just want to know what the procedure is. I mean, I give you an example. As the chair of the delegation, I don't make statements on behalf of the delegation unless there's a vote. They got to be a vote. Sometimes I got outvoted. It's very rare, but sometimes it happens. No, but I don't make statements on behalf of the board or the delegation unless
We
vote on it.
do not either. So we require a majority consensus from our board to put out any statement. And that happened in this case.
A majority consensus or majority, like, so you just ask 4 people and then your consensus?
No, it's a discussion with all of the board members.
But not at the same time.
Doesn't that kind of go against the
I mean,
open?
Isn't that against
Like,
the-
if you're going to put
Not
something out on
every
behalf of a board,
Yeah.
it's supposed to be public, like you should have it as an open meeting, so you're putting it out as a member of the board.
It's not like.
If you're giving a vote to put it out by majority,
Well,
that is not the way to do it.
They answered it. So
There are also both and administrative functions that occur within the board that don't happen in an open meeting.
and I'm assuming the same decision was made related to the investigation and all that as well, correct?
Investigation.
I think you guys hired somebody to investigate those comments.
All the Title IX complaints that we received that we were obligated to investigate. Yes, we did complete that.
No, but was that a vote by the board or was that in consensus, majority consensus?
Due to the time constraints, that was a decision made by leadership.
Those are the questions related to those 2 topics. Let me see if there's anything else because I'm 2 minutes.
I do want to clarify that, though. That decision was made by leadership. And let's remember, under Title IX complaints, we're required to investigate those complaints. So we were required, and in this case, because those complaints were against a board member, we chose to use outside counsel because we did not feel it was fair to ask an inside FCPS Title IX coordinator to investigate a board member. That did not.
That also happened.
That was not.
Do we often advertise into the whole school system when we're going to investigate somebody or have a complaint about a teacher? To everybody as by name?
There's a difference between an employee and an elected official. I think you
I
agree with that.
I just want to be very clear. I just want to be very clear.
Yeah.
I think
It's
we
interesting.
agree that there's a difference.
Interesting that you bring up Title IX. So what is the current Title IX guidance?
Or
Is FCPS with all of their policies in compliance with all the federal Title IX guidance? We're talking about Title IX investigations and everything like that.
Following the 2020 guidance, which was reverted back to when President Trump took office. All
And
the policies and regulations are aligned with that guidance.
Which has been rescinded in some form.
2024 was rescinded.
24 was
We're
rescinded.
back in the 2020 and all of our policies and regs
Are
are
aligning
aligned
for
with
that.
the 2020.
So there,
Go ahead.
so if the federal government does an investigation into all of our policies, then we should not be at risk of losing any federal funding because they're all in compliance with the.
I'm speaking about Title
IX.
IX, since that was your question. I don't have
Yes.
a broader question about policies across the board.
Are you, just to clarify, Dr. Sergo, are you discussing how we handle Title IX complaints?
Yes.
So Dr. Sergo is talking specifically how we handle Title IX complaints, not
I'm-
whether or not
We're
not whether or not like we're in compliance, like with regards to sports and things like that. You were speaking specifically how we handle the complaints.
There's annual training that we take and all of that.
No, I'm speaking
about
of
Title IX.
in general of Title IX where things have changed. Are you in compliance with the guidance, the current guidance, not per investigations, but in general?
Yes. Yes, we are. Because the 2024 language was about things being sex-based and some other things, and all of those have been rescinded. And so we're back to the 2020, which is just sexual harassment. There's like, it's whatever it was in 2020 when President Trump was in office, it's reverted back to that. All of our policies and regs are in alignment with the current law under the Trump administration. Title IX, correct, Mr. Blivis?
Well, so we're okay with then the girls and sports issue as far as
Title IX.
being.
So if someone wants to give me a little bit more about what makes it
Gender,
Title IX.
Title IX is gender, okay, I want to get back to this one a little bit and we'll see if 443 is in compliance with the current guidelines.
I was only speaking to Title IX. I was
Right.
speaking-
Under the current federal guidelines, so we have a little bit of discrepancy, so I would like some more information on that piece of it, because if we are not in compliance, we would lose 4% of federal funding.
So are you asking if, so Title IX is about sexual harassment?
Yes.
And so tell me what.
She's
the crosswalk-
she's saying in
Gender identity and
443,
sports.
does it run concurrent or does it run counter to a Title IX, which could be if someone walks into a locker room and there's an opposite gender person there, they could feel that that's sexual harassment, which would fall under Title IX. So does 443 fall under Title IX enforcement at this time? Is it in proper form, or are we in conflict with the current administration's Title IX?
If a complaint were filed under Title IX for the circumstance you are describing, investigation would be conducted in accordance with the 2020 rules that have been reverted back to.
But the policy being in place already allows. So we have a policy in place that would enable. What is your name, sir?
Stephen Blivis. I'm Chief Legal Counsel.
Okay, Stephen Blivis. Mr. Blivis.
It's Bliviss.
Yeah, I got it. My question is, no. My question is, Mr. Blivis, is 443 as it's currently written in contract, does it contrary to the Title IX code as it's now written in federal law? So do we have a policy here that would already put a child in a situation of being sexually harassed? And if we do, there's a liability with that.
Title IX speaks to claims of sexual harassment. Policy 443 speaks to, would you like to speak, sir? Because you seem ready to jump.
Mr. Rose.
I think I'm done. So you
Well,
and I will have a discussion.
Let me clarify something. We are in compliance.
Yeah, we will.
As Dr. Sergo stated, we are in compliance with Title IX. We also, our policy on 443,
I'm sorry. I'm not gonna have your counsel sit here and stare me down like you've got something on me. I asked you a question and you're not answering it, sir. So answer the question. I gave you the situation. You're staring me down like you want to finish your statement that shows that you're in compliance with current federal guidelines.
The revisions to policy 443 are in compliance with federal law.
So if a male walks into, because they identify as a female, into a female locker room right now, you're saying that that's 443 is not in conflict with Title IX, that they couldn't go in there and file a sexual harassment complaint.
They could file a sexual harassment.
So we have a policy in place that enables the opportunity for a sexual harassment complaint.
I'd just like to.
Let's
not get.
That's what I'm saying.
You are deliberately misunderstanding.
Hey guys,
Thank you.
real quick, so we're gonna,
Thank you.
Let me just
we're gonna
speak.
turn the volume down on that for a minute, and we'll come back to that. Obviously, that's an important topic. So we're out of time. I just want to bring up one more thing.
Can I quickly speak though to the specifics of that? And
No,
why-
because there's
No, I
a
wanna- I just wanna
disagreement.
share- No, it's
There's
not
a
a disagreement. It's not a disagreement. I want to share that.
No, it's
No. I just want to
It's a
share
disagreement.
something else, is that we are in compliant with existing case law.
No, we're not.
No, we're not.
Dead wrong.
Hold on.
Grimm v. Gloucester is the standing case law in the Fourth Circuit and what you're talking about. Yes, as Mr. Blevis has pointed out, if someone is sexually harassed in a bathroom, that has nothing to do with their sex. You could be sexually harassed in a locker room.
If they
by
don't
your-
feel safe
by
because
your-
that person's there exposing themselves
but
by a
that-
policy that's put in place by the school board,
But
how
that
would
is
not create an
currently,
environment for that?
that is currently supported by existing case
All
law.
right,
I just
Mr.
wanna
Rose, thank you.
Point that up. We didn't just pull it out of the air.
I got you. But here's the deal. As Mr. Davis knows, as an attorney, fellow attorney, always lots of debates over case law and things of that nature. So we'll leave it there. Last thing, please, is changing the, something really heavy to deal with, food to waste. So we're gonna have a discussion about it. I don't want to, but I would like the school to provide some feedback. Look, I'm not a huge super environmentalist, but I know some good people in Frederick County that have some pretty innovative ways to save a lot of food, to help a lot of people out. I understand there was a pilot program in a couple schools. They were funding it, or at least providing some equipment, and then that program has just ended. So I wanted to get some more feedback on behalf of those individuals, because I thought they were doing some good work for the community, quite frankly. And I don't want to see a program like that go to waste, no pun intended. But if you could get that to me, or anybody else that wants to learn more about that with that information and figure out what we're doing going forward, because I think that's important. All right. So I'm done. I would just say I appreciate the board allowing us to come here and ask questions and get more information. I'm sure there's more to come. It's a partnership between the state and the county. You can't do anything without the state. We can't do anything without you. So we need to figure out how to work together and get some of these important issues addressed. And look, we only bring up these things because they're brought up to us. We don't sit at home cooking this stuff up. People are bringing it to us. They demand answers. That's our job. We bring it to you guys. So we appreciate you allowing us to do that. Do you have anything? You good? Yes,
I appreciate the
much later.
opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity to speak so candidly.
Madam President, the last word?
I am good. We appreciate the partnership as well. And truly, as we approach the legislative session, keep us looped in. If there are ways that we can come in and support data, feedback, we're happy to do that. So.
Okay. All right. With that, we
will
adjourn.
We will adjourn at 5:08 p.m.
Thank you.